Hey, this is Molly Patrick, and you're listening to the Clean Food Dirty Girl podcast. We are all about helping people eat more plants and celebrating imperfection as we navigate life's messiness. Hey there, this is Molly, and you are listening to the Clean Food Dirty Girl podcast. Thank you for joining me for today's episode. So I usually record these podcasts that I just do solo with just the audio version. So I never record myself doing these types of episodes. So I'll usually only do a video episode or a video version of our podcast when I have guests on. And then, of course, we're having an interview, and so the video is on. But I've always been hesitant to record just me doing this because honestly, one of the things that I really liked about doing the podcast at first before I had guests on was that I could just do it in my pajamas and just show up and do it like in the middle of the night if I wanted to, or like super early or super late, and not have to worry about lighting or background or, putting on something that looks decent. And so I've just always done that, but I'm going to try to do more videos so that our friends on YouTube and people on YouTube can also benefit from the podcast. And so we can't really do that if it's audio only. So bear with me as I get through this this first video version of the podcast solo. So I wanted to talk a little bit today about having big feelings and a thought that I go to when I'm in a situation or something is coming up that feels big or scary or challenging or sad. Any of those things that, we all feel as humans. We all feel those things from time to time, and sort of what my go-to is for coping with them and supporting myself through those times and connecting with myself. And, one thing that we tend to do, and it's easy for us as humans to do this, but when feelings come up that are hard for us to feel, that are challenging for us to feel, we tend to make them go away. And sometimes that's through eating. A lot of times that's through eating. It's a big thing that I coach people through who are part of our Drop It Plant-Powered Weight Loss Club is, understanding why you eat when you're not hungry, right? And a big part of that is because eating is a very quick way to get rid of challenging emotions. Now, it's temporary for sure, but it is easy. I mean, if I'm feeling really bad and I put cookies in my mouth, of course I'm going to feel better, momentarily. It's not just food. It can be alcohol. It can be shopping. It can be sex. It can be the social media. It can be, exercise. There can be a variety of things. So when you engage in an activity to make yourself not feel something, in the coaching world, we call that buffering. And it's a big thing that happens to everybody, by the way, to everybody. And just most people aren't aware of it, right? So I was going to bed last night and I was thinking about something coming up for me that's challenging and that's sad and that's almost kind of scary. And I was just sitting with it and I was thinking, okay, what do I do when I feel this way? What is, let me look at my tool belt. Let me see what I have. Because it was, 10 o'clock at night. I was already in bed. I wasn't going to get up to eat. I don't drink anymore. I don't do drugs. I don't, right? So there was not a lot of options. I was like, okay, so how can I get through this? And one of my go-to thoughts, when I'm going through challenging times, or, even if it's a moment, if it's a big thing, if it's a small thing, whatever it is I come back to the thought that everything is impermanent and everything is always changing. And this is the nature of life is that it changes and things happen, things come and go, right? This is the nature of it. And this is something that brings me quite a lot of peace. Now, I asked my partner, hey, do you have any like go-to thoughts that comfort you in a time when you are, having a strong feeling, a big emotion? And she thought about it and she's like, I don't know. I don't really think so. And she asked me if I did. And I said, yeah. And I, told her what I just told you. And she's like, wow, that is not comforting for me at all. That is scary to think of that everything changes and it's impermanent. And, she's like, that to me really makes me more scared. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. So why do I find comfort in that idea? And another person can find fear in that idea. And so I started to think about it more and I'm like, okay, why is this comforting for me? And what I realized was that when I think to myself, you know, impermanence is the way of it. This is a rule, a law. This is just what it is, right? It's like gravity. Gravity exists. We can like it or not. We can be neutral about it, but this is the way that it is. It's the same thing. Impermanence is guaranteed because nothing is stagnant, right? There's to some degree, there's always some amount of movement. Even when we feel stuck in a situation or like nothing is happening, there's, on a very micro level, there's a lot happening. And even you zoom out, there's a lot happening. So we never are really stuck and nothing ever stays the same when we're alive. That's just not how life works. And so by recognizing that, there is some kind of acceptance that goes on in my head about the challenging thing. Maybe it's just, oh, yeah, life is because really change is hard for humans, right? Even if it's change that we want, even if it's change that we know is good for us, even if it's change that like needs to happen, it can still be hard and it can still be scary. When I accept that to be alive is to be part of change, always, 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 and that things happen and life happens and it's always moving and it's always changing, that helps me accept the reality. It helps me accept what is actually happening, whether it's something that is wonderful and easy and happy or something that is hard and challenging and kind of scary. But it brings that acceptance. And when there is acceptance about something outside of you, or even, whether that's like a diagnosis or an injury or a relationship or, whatever it is, when there is acceptance of that, that doesn't mean that like accepting something doesn't mean that you have to like it or be happy about it or not try to change it. It just means that you are honoring, hey, I am not trying to make this reality something that it's not. I'm saying that, okay, this Post-it note is pink. And I'm not pissed off saying I wish it were green. I'm saying this Post-it is pink. That's what it is, right? And so by accepting the change and the nature of change in life, I accept it. I accept what's happening. I honor it. I don't necessarily like it, but there is a certain amount of peace and release that comes with accepting what is. And when I thought about that even more, I kept kind of breaking it down. And I thought, well, when I accept this situation for being what it is, I can then feel sad about that if I want, or I can feel angry about that if I want, or I can feel pain about that if I want. I can feel anything I want about that. And it doesn't have that added layer of trying to make it something else. Because when you have that added layer of trying to make it different or trying to make it go away or fighting against it, that adds another layer of suffering on top of the other challenging emotions. And that is much harder because you're not only feeling sad about the thing happening, but you're feeling a lot of anger that it's not a different way, or you're feeling a lot of pain that it's not the way you want it to be. And so it's like, you know, sadness and pain and anger, all those things in our life, we're going to feel them during this life because we're human. And that's unavoidable. But we don't have to feel suffering. We don't have to add suffering on top of those emotions that are like the lower, more challenging emotions. We can take away that layer of suffering and just allow ourselves to feel pure and simple sadness for the situation without adding on additional suffering when we are wishing that this situation was different, or we're angry that this situation is happening, right? So for me, if I can take off that additional layer of suffering that happens when you are not accepting the reality of something, that you are not, that you are pushing against it and wishing it were something different, and that you have expectations that are different from what's happening, that is not going to help, right? That's only going to make us feel worse. When we can take that away by allowing the situation to be what it is. That not, again, not meaning we condone it, not meaning that we like it, not meaning that we just lay down and never do anything about it. But the first step is to, hey, I see what's happening here. This is what's happening. Okay, now I get to feel however I want to feel about that. And then if I want to try to do something about it, then I can, right? Or, maybe it's appropriate for me to do something to try to change that situation. Maybe I can, maybe I do have some say over that, and maybe I don't, right? But until we really allow ourselves to feel whatever emotions we need to feel to process, then we'll kind of be stuck there. Only after we've allowed ourselves to grieve, to mourn, to feel sad, to, whatever we need to do about that one circumstance that we can't change, only then can we say, okay, well, is there some way I can show up? How do I want to show up? Is there something that I can do that makes a difference? Or is it just out of my hands? Is it just completely out of my control? And if it's totally out of my control, how can I then find some joy in my life anyways? And when we have that added layer of suffering, it's much harder to feel energized and to feel like you have agency. If you have that added layer of suffering, it's like you are at the mercy of whatever it is. I think that thought, and it's a thought that I always come back to. Life has changed. Life is always changing. Things are happening. Things don't remain the same. They don't. They just don't. Time keeps moving. And that is the way that I kind of ground myself in the reality, that I can accept the reality. Now, I'm not always going to like the reality. And I'm not saying, by accepting whatever circumstance, it means that you are totally fine with it. It doesn't mean that. It just means that, hey, this is what it is. And so from that point, I can just be sad about it. And that's what I did last night. I had that thought, okay, this is life. Things come and go. Life is always changing. I then allowed myself to feel sad and to feel it in my body and to allow it to be there. And then that sadness moved on. And I didn't have any suffering that went along with that. I didn't suffer. I was sad, but that was okay. Being sad sometimes is okay. Right? Being angry sometimes is okay. Being happy is okay. These are all just different emotions, but there's not the suffering, because the suffering is what makes it really hard and what makes you feel stuck. And so when you process an emotion, that's when things start to move. But when you're kind of stuck in that suffering, the emotions don't process and they get stuck and you feel like crap. I mean, I've talked about this before. I haven't talked about this recently on the podcast. I talked a lot about these kind of topics in the beginning. So if you want to hear more about this stuff, you can go back to previous episodes, more in the beginning of this pod, when I first launched it, and you can hear some more. But it's important. And even though I've had a lot of guests on lately and we've been talking about like plant-based stuff, really, I'm still, at the end of the day, I'm still a life coach. I'm a weight loss coach. I coach myself all the time. And these are the things that are, I think, really good reminders for people, regardless of what you're going through right now, because it's just the human condition, right? We're going to go through challenging things. We're going to go through challenging times. There's going to be things that we don't like. There's going to be things that are really painful. There's going to be things that are scary and big. And, how do we get through those things without being completely overwhelmed so that we don't end up in a pile on the floor, stuffing potato chips and ice cream in our mouth? I mean, sometimes that might be appropriate. I don't, it's like, that's not a horrible thing if that happens, but what's going to happen in our life as a result of that? Is that then going to make our life harder if that's our MO, if that's what we keep doing time and time again? And so this little, remembering that your feelings aren't because of the circumstances in your life. Your feelings are, happen because of the thoughts you're thinking about the circumstances in your life, right? This is really important because this allows us to have that agency and to stay empowered. And so that's one important part. But the other, for me, that thought of everything is impermanent, everything is changing. So, there might have been a situation that I loved and was easy for me and really happy, and that doesn't stay, right? That changes, life changes. And so maybe that situation is not going to be as easy or as happy. Well, that's life. It changes. And it could be that, like a situation that's really, really hard, that also changes because life is always changing. It goes both ways. And so sometimes this impermanence can be a blessing, like my sister dying, being in that grief and that sadness right after she died. My gosh, that was so hard and also so beautiful in many ways. And also it was impermanent. I mean, I still miss her every day and I still love her so much and I always will, but I'm not in that really raw grief like I was right after she died. It's because things change. Life is impermanent. It's always changing. So it's when things are really hard, just keeping in mind, hey, things won't always be this hard. Things will look different. When things are really happy, it's not a bad idea to be like, hey, it's a way for you to really enjoy the things that you are enjoying and to really appreciate them because things change. But either way, when we accept that that is the nature of life, that is the reality of life, and we get to have whatever feelings we want about that, and it's okay. And we can feel whatever it is without trying to wish it, without wishing it were different, without being really pissed off that it wasn't something else, like trying to be like, but yes, it's changed, but I don't want there to be change. I get it, but you can't help that, right? So taking away that additional layer of suffering is going to make it easier for you. And again, the suffering comes up when we have an expectation that something should be different than it is. Either we want something that's not there or we don't want something that's there. We are not willing to accept that that is what's happening. That's when that suffering will come up. And this takes practice. I mean, it's not what, I wasn't taught this until I went through coach training. I was in my, 40s when I was taught this. And my God, though, what an empowering thing to learn. Hey, I see, I have clarity. The situation is I'm seeing it for what it is. I get to feel sad about that. Then that sadness gets to process out and I get to feel something else, So it's important to have, I mean, this is just one tool. This is one tool that I have that I come back to. And, um, I think that it's important in this life to have a good tool belt that you can draw from and that you can use. And, I know that for sure in our Drop It Plant Powered Weight Loss Club, I give people lots of tools because the whole idea is about, okay, how can we get through this life and get through these challenging things without eating, right? Without eating more than we need, and that is, creating these health challenges for us. Because again, that would even eating when you are not hungry and overeating, that will eventually cause excess weight, and that is a form of suffering itself in a way, right? Because with different health conditions that might come up, with just added weight, with everything else, it's this is something that is not for most people necessary. But how do you then deal with life when it's hard and challenging without trying to make it go away? Right. So I talk a lot about this in our Drop It Club, and because it's about food, but it's also much more than food. It's about kind of why we make the decisions we do and how we can make different decisions that will help and support us. So I talk a lot about this in my coaching there, and I give people a lot of tools. But these tools, like, whatever the tools are for you, have them handy, have them ready to go, because life is intense, and that's guaranteed. And it's beautiful at the same time. It's wonderful. It's I'm so happy to be alive, and I recognize, the challenges and the heartache and the heartbreak and the fuckery of it, and I also recognize, when I see my cat, or when I go outside at night and look up at the moon, or when the breeze is making that beautiful sound in the palm trees outside my window. It's like all those little moments are so important. And so, just having a full human experience, it's a beautiful thing, and that doesn't have to come with suffering. And so, yeah, you can practice that. And you can also practice getting that tool belt full of useful tools, so that when you go through challenging times, you can get through it and support yourself through it and stay strong and stay healthy, and stay grounded, right? Okay, I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for listening, and I hope you go eat lots of plants and practice accepting what is. It'll change your life. Okay, bye. Did you know that Clean Food Dirty Girl has a club? We do. It's called the Clean Food Dirty Girl Meal Plan Club. And if you want to eat more plant-based meals that are delicious, that are damn good, that will have you craving them, if you want to feel energized and healthy from head to toe, if you want to save time in the kitchen each week, if you want to use all of the groceries that you actually buy, and if you want the omnivores in your life to say, yum, to the plant-based meals that you're cooking, you have got to join us. Go to cleanfooddyrtygirl.com, and on the homepage you can find out more. I would love to see you in the club. It is the best. Come find out what all the buzz is about. It is life-changing, and I would love to have you. Thank you for listening to this podcast and for being in our sphere. If you can rate and review this podcast wherever you listen to them, that would be badass. Thank you so much for spreading the dirty love.